Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. So we are 100 days out from the midterms. So we got a bunch of midterm stuff in here for you. Sagar and I both focusing on that in our monologues. We also have Kyle Kondik on, great analyst, to break down exactly where things stand today. But we have a lot of other stuff to get to in the show as well. First of all, total insanity on the Hill last week over benefits for burn pit victims. These are veterans who were exposed to these toxic burn pits over years and years in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now they have all these rare diseases. Some of them have died from rare cancers. They have been having to fight to get basic healthcare benefits from the VA. It looked like this was finally going to come to fruition. And then at the last minute, 30 Republicans flipped their vote. They were a yes, flipped to no. Jon Stewart absolutely lacing into them. So we'll give you all of those details. We also last week brought you the details on that new Manchin-Schumer climate bill. The biggest obstacle now seeming to emerge is Kyrsten Sinema. Surprise, surprise. So we'll tell you the latest about, basically she hasn't really come out and said what she thinks about this. Manchin is trying to sort of like massage her ego to see if this thing is actually going to come to pass. We also have a Live Golf Saudi Trump update for you. Some interesting details there. New polling showing just how 3/4 of the American public does not want Biden to run for president again or to be president again. Pretty dire situation for him. We also have Nancy Pelosi and James Carville defending what to me is pretty indefensible in terms of their hypocrisy. Of course, Pelosi out saying January 6th is the worst thing, the Republicans are an existential threat, all of these things, and then turning around and backing people who are some of the most deranged Stop the Steal conspiracists in the hope that they'll get through their Republican primaries and be easier targets for Democrats. So Carville backing her up on that, not just on the political strategy, but on the moral ethics of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's never anything unethical about this. Before we forget, live show. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. We are coming to Atlanta, September 16th. Go ahead and buy those tickets if you haven't already. We're nearing the end of the promotion there. It's only a month and a half away. It's exciting.
I know, it's going to be right around the corner.
Very exciting. As a reminder, it's going to be the first of many. But if you are in the area, somewhere around there, we could help us out. It deeply will, because it shows other venues that we can indeed sell tickets. It actually expands the number of venues and cities that we're able to go to. So link is down there in the description. But let's start with the burn pits. This obviously has become a massive cultural touchstone. I think it should. Jon Stewart single-handedly is the person responsible for advancing this legislation. Before that, there were thousands of people afflicted with all kinds of crazy neurological conditions, health conditions, breathing conditions, having been exposed to these toxic burn pits. And just, again, if this is your intro to what exactly a burn pit is, in Iraq and Afghanistan, throughout our 20 years of experience there, we would just simply put stuff into these pits, everything from human excrement to weapons to all kinds of just leftover stuff, and then light it on fire with jet fuel. And then, by the way, just post U.S. troops all around it, either guarding it or within the immediate vicinity. Nobody on earth can tell you that that's going to be good for you. And as we saw post 9/11, thousands of people years later are really suffering. And from the beginning, the Veterans Affairs Department has been terrible in appropriating funds to the toxic burn pit victims. They haven't recognized it fully as a condition. They blame, complex bureaucracy. And so Congress did what they're supposed to do, which is they need to appropriate money, and they need to make sure that these victims are recognized by U.S. law and are given the care that they deserve the years after we put them in harm's way. Now, we had thought that this is called the PACT Act was a done deal. It was 82-14 vote, had passed the Senate and went to the House. There were some small changes that were added within the House of Representatives, and it was kicked back over to the Senate for what was expected to be a routine vote. However, Republicans now, under Senator Pat Toomey, are leading a charge to actually block the bill. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. 41 Republican senators blocked that bill to expand the health care for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Now, the objection is that from Senator Toomey, and apparently backed by many Senate Republicans, is that a specific accounting measure within the bill would supposedly spend the same money twice. And according to Toomey, this is not actually backed up by several independent analyses, would enable hundreds of billions of dollars in new unrelated spending on the discretionary side of the federal budget. Mitch McConnell, Pat Toomey, and others somehow discovered this in the immediate aftermath, Crystal, of Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer finding a deal on the so-called Inflation Reduction Act is actually just I think they should just call it what it is, which is an electric vehicle subsidy plus new tax credits. But that's fine. I'm completely fine with those things.
So,
anyway, go ahead.
Yes, that is the important context, is Republicans were in the midst of a total hissy fit temper tantrum over the fact that, remember, McConnell had come out and say, listen, if you guys are going to go forward with the reconciliation deal, I'm going to tank the CHIPS Act, which, let's, by the way, take a moment to step back and think about the total insanity of that. Why does this legislation have anything to do with this legislation over here? If the CHIPS Act is a good bill that you think is good for the country, why would you hold this hostage? But anyway, he had made that threat. So they kept it quiet. Democrats uncharacteristically actually kept their mouths shut and had a smart strategy. Hours after the CHIPS Act passes through the Senate, then it's revealed that this Manchin-Schumer deal comes out. Republicans are irate. They're melting down. They're so mad. They're not used to actually having Democrats have 3 brain cells to rub together and actually have a decent strategy. They whip against the CHIPS Act in the House. That's part of the retribution, but it still gets through the House. They still have enough Republican defectors, and the Democratic caucus stays together. So lo and behold, the next thing they do is decide to block this bill. Now, let's be really clear, because Toomey, in fairness, was opposed to this bill last time it came through, and has always apparently been hung up on this stupid accounting thing, which it's just the difference between designating this money as mandatory versus discretionary. Well, guess what making it mandatory does? It means that these veterans are going to be able to count on it versus having to come back and continue to beg, hat in hand, as Jon Stewart ultimately puts it, to be able to access these benefits and prove that they're worthy of our support after serving our country. So this accounting piece has always been in this bill. There was an impression that Democrats had snuck this in at the last minute and tried to pull one over on the Republicans. No, no, no. This is the very same bill that sailed through last time. What was it, 84 people voted for it? 30-some Republicans flipped their votes on the identical bill as part of their hissy fit over the Manchin-Schumer bill. I mean, that is the only logical conclusion you can come to, given the fact that it is literally the same thing that they voted for just weeks ago.
Oh, absolutely. And this is something that Jon Stewart, to his credit, has been using both his celebrity, his platform, travel to Washington. He's making sure that everybody who can is hearing about this and is drawing attention to what previously would have just been arcane Senate procedure and some ridiculous objection, and now drawing it to the center of public attention. Let's hear what he had to say.
I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know what to say. I've been coming down here 10, 15 years. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Christina King will tell you from VFW. She sat in an office with Mitch McConnell and a war veteran from Kentucky, and he looked that man in the eyes and he said, we'll get it done. And he lied to him. Because Mitch McConnell yesterday flipped. I'm used to the lies. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Senator Pat Toomey won't take a meeting with the veterans groups. Sends out his chief of staff. I'm used to the cowardice. I've been here a long time. Senate's where accountability goes to die. These people don't care. They're never losing their jobs. They're never losing their health care. Pat Toomey didn't lose his job. He's walking away. God knows what kind of pot of gold he's stepping into to lobby this government to shit on more people. I'm used to all of it, but I am not used to the cruelty.
I mean, there's not a lot you can argue with there. Senator Toomey is retiring. He has been probably one of the #1 friends of corporate America in the United States Senate, which I've always found insane because he is from the state of Pennsylvania. It's a great, actually, preview into how you can use culture war politics to actually economically punish your own state whenever you're a senator and actually get reelected. So it's kind of a mystifying and interesting test case. Ron Johnson is another one who fits in this category. But these two gentlemen, economic libertarians, really to their core. Will it be any wonder when he leaves and he gets, feted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and he becomes a lobbyist for some Fortune 500 company? No, it won't. And he is exactly right in pointing that out. What I think beyond Toomey, though, is that, as you pointed out, this has been a part of the bill from the beginning. They didn't care when 82 to 14 of them voted for it.
Right.
And then they flipped overnight. That was the thing. That is Steve Daines and Ted Cruz and many others were seen fist bumping on the floor of the Senate after blocking this. And again, this is done solely as a political move that they happen to just wake up to at the 11th hour and are now saying, oh, well, unless this gets fixed, then we're not going to go through with it, effectively holding it hostage. And again, to the actual implications, I mean, do you remember all those times that they also played footsie with 9/11 healthcare workers funding? That we don't. Why should we keep putting people through this? Like making it mandatory, which we do have for many things, especially for the elderly. You know, they'll never actually vote against that, at least on the record. They won't vote against that one. But we have this arrangement for people who we have decided that we owe. I mean, who else could we find that we owe as much as people who were their 9/11 first responders or those who were afflicted with a terrible health condition as a result of serving their country and serving overseas in a war that they shouldn't have been in the first place, and if they are, then we sure as hell should do everything we can in order to help them.
And I think there's a couple other things to say about this. Number one, I know there's probably a lot of people who look at Jon Stewart as like a partisan actor, but remember I think we played the interview he did with Dennis McDonough, who's the head of the VA, and he was very harsh with McDonough, who had no good answers on this. And it is a travesty that what it takes in America to just get the basics of what you are owed is to have a celebrity who's willing to, you know, go and do the interviews and hold people's feet to the fire and shame these legislators into doing the right thing after decades of dragging their feet. It's the exact same thing with the 9/11 survivors. It took Jon Stewart coming out and shaming the lawmakers into finally doing the right thing. And now it looked like he had been able to do the same thing effectively with toxic burn pit victims. And there's also money in here for people who are still struggling with Agent Orange as well. All the money in this bill, just to be really clear, because I saw a lot of misinformation online about this, all of this money goes to veterans who have suffered conditions because of their service. That's it. That's the whole bill. There's not all this extra this and that and poison. No, it's just money for veterans who have served the country and who have illnesses because of it. The current system, the reason why they're not able to get health care for these rare cancers and other conditions they've developed is because they have to prove that that condition came directly from the burn pits. How the hell are you going to do that? Okay, that's impossible. But when you look at the type of toxic chemicals that they were exposed to, it has been scientifically proven that these things are cancer causing. So this is the very, very least that we owe these people. I mean, let's be clear. We will never be able to make it up to them. There is no making this thing right. This is the bare minimum of what we can do. And then as I always do, I have to point out the fact that, you know, people who are affiliated with the State Department came up with this Havana syndrome thing, which is thoroughly unproven, which, you know, the sound that they said was associated with it turned out to be crickets. The agency's own analysis says this is probably not any, you know, Russian brainwave like weapon or whatever they were theorizing. I wonder what the vote was in the Senate to appropriate money for Havana syndrome sufferers. This thing, that sailed through, and yet these veterans are having to fight tooth and nail to get the basics of what they deserve. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.